And thank you for joining us. I realize that quite a few people have indicated that they wanted to watch the recording of this session. And I totally understand that, being a former principal myself. My name is Jenny Ray, and I am the owner of Lead Forward in providing support and services for principals. And this is just one of those supports that we will be providing throughout the year for principals and school and district leaders. So we're going to begin this webinar series for principals. And just a reminder, this is in a webinar format. It is 1 hour with a hard stop at 4:30 Eastern Time, and you decide the level of participation. You're welcome to use chat to unmute and comment or ask a question, or this can be just a passive event for you where you're listening while you're doing something else. Totally fine. Once again, anyone who registered will get the video format of this session as well, and every session that they're registered for. And the recording will be available next day, tomorrow. And also, you will receive a follow-up email with not only the link to this recording, but also the slide deck and any other resources that are brought up during the session. I'll be sure and attach those to the follow-up email, and you'll get that tomorrow. So welcome. So first I want to recognize the leaders in the room because, there was a recent 2021 study that had been, as you can see at the bottom, 2 decades of research had taken place, and this is from the Wallace Foundation. And it just reiterated once again how much principles matter to a school and the effect that principals have on those around them. So I just wanted to just send out a reminder about that to you because you're doing some very important work and making a difference to students, to teachers, and to the community. So I love this quote from that same research study, that there is no higher return on investment in K-12 education than the cultivation of high quality school leadership. So before I started working on my own, I had been working with the Kentucky Department of Education, and for the past 12 years have been supporting school and district leaders in different capacities. So I'm just really excited to continue this work and to be able to perhaps support individual leaders a little more so than trying to support an entire state, but to really find those support mechanisms that individual leaders need, and to be that thought coach for leaders moving forward. All right, but today's session is around finding those supports for brand new teachers, the new teachers in your building. And across the state and the nation, just the leaders that I'm speaking with continue to talk about that they have more new teachers in their building than ever before. And with that being the case, then I think we have to be extremely mindful then to provide the kind of support that is necessary for those teachers to succeed. So this is from the New Teacher Center, and it describes the phases of first year teachers' attitude towards teaching. So notice that it is not their attitude towards students or towards the school or their principal or towards their colleagues, but this is their attitude towards the profession itself. So as you can see in August, and even before August, that they're in a state of anticipation, that they're excited about, being game changers. Um, what is it? And they're going to change the world, so they're anticipating the effects that they're going to have in the classroom. And that continues, but it starts to wane once school begins. And between September and October, they fall into what has been described as survival mode. And, once they're in survival, it's because they're now seeing that what they anticipated before, they didn't realize there were so many deadlines and meetings that needed to be attended. They are just trying to keep their head above water at this point, and still loving the job, but falling into that I am just surviving. and I'm wondering if I'm good at this. Then from that, that's why this is really a critical time to be really thinking about that intentional support to new teachers, because if you look at this time of year, in October, they are escalating downwards from survival to disillusionment. So then what happens between now and, say, winter break is that the teachers go home on winter break and they're beginning to decide, maybe teaching is not for them. It's not, they're not cut out for this job. The students are not what they expected. The colleagues are not what they expected. The profession is not what they expected. And they're talking to their family and friends about what else they can do with this degree that they've earned. And then from that, then they can, when they come back after winter break and around early March, they begin to get that feeling of rejuvenation again, and then towards reflection at the end of the year and back up to anticipation. But as you notice, that level of anticipation is not as high as it once was. And when I've used this in other learning and training seminars and have talked with new teachers and new principals about this, it's like they could relate. They saw this. And this is just a natural occurrence. So, what we're going to talk about today and what we've been studying are, what are the ways that you can decrease that drop from survival to disillusionment, so it's not such a deep trough. How do you make that trough less deep? And then how do you accelerate towards rejuvenation? So that's what we're going to be talking about in these next 3 days. So in thinking about this, you might be wondering, well, how can I gauge like where my teachers are, where my new teachers are at this time? Well, I have partnered with Michael Moore at the Urban Schools Human Capital Academy, and they developed this Starting Strong temperature check survey. When I share this slide deck with you, you will notice that it is a hot link to go straight to that survey. But this is a survey that is supposed to be administered every week, and it's just a way to, well, as it says, to take a temperature check, to keep a pulse on what your new teachers are thinking and how they're feeling, and what kinds of support might they be asking for, requesting. What do you notice? It's just data points for you to collect to know where they are, and so that you can interject that support before they get too deep into that disillusionment stage. So I am going to click on this just for a moment so that you can take a look at this. And this can also be, obviously made into an electronic form as well. And that's what this one was. But you can see, just asking about how confident do you feel about your growth and development as an educator? How satisfied are you with the support that you're receiving from us? And when was the last time someone visited your classroom and gave feedback? Looking back on the past week, because remember this is given weekly. Looking back on the past week, what do you want to celebrate? Looking ahead, what support would be helpful? Do you have any materials and supplies that you need? And what else do you want us to know so that we can better help you? So, giving these teachers a voice and a way to say, yeah, this is what I need. And they do name and claim this. Okay, they put their name so that you know who to provide the support to. So that's just one way of, finding out, doing a pulse check. Where are your teachers, and then how can you find out what types of support that might benefit them moving forward? So we're going to look today at some low intensity support strategies, and then tomorrow afternoon we're going to dig into some high intensity support strategies. And what is meant by low intensity support is just that it makes minimal demands on the school or district resources. So a formal orientation for new teachers, that's something that is typical that you would see happen at schools and districts. Mentorship, some type of mentorship program is happening almost everywhere, it seems. And according to Research Beyond Kentucky as well, and then adjusting those working conditions. And we're gonna look a little deeper into that one today about what that might look like. So let's look at formal orientation. So how is it that you might help to um, invite teachers to be a part of the community? I think something that I've heard to be common is where new teachers, they will be bused to all the different locations of where students live, so that they can have a better idea of who their students are before they come to see them on day one. So I think that that's something that's relatively common, or at least I've heard of that happening a lot for new teachers in a district, is that they get an idea of the community, a feel for the community, and actually see where students are coming from when they come to your community. But then when they come to your school, but then I'm wondering, are there other ways that you can help teachers to assimilate within the community? So be thinking about that. And then how about the district? How is it that students are, or that teachers are assimilated into the district? How do they know about, you know, not all of the district policies, but the ones that are most pertinent to them for those brand new teachers? um, how do they know about the curriculum, and about what are the parts that we're really honing in on and focusing in on as a school this year? How do they find out about that? And then also just about your school, how do they know all of the ins and outs of the school? um, what about all of the things that are outside of even what's in the student and the teacher handbook? How do you let them know about that school community and find ways to assimilate them within that school community? So in thinking about that, this is our first reflection time. So how might you help new teachers assimilate into the community, district, and school, other than some of the ideas that have been posed here? And at this time, you are welcome to use the chat, or you can unmute your mic. Or if you're at home listening and watching this, just for you to jot down for yourself some ideas that are coming to mind, or maybe questions that come to mind from this as well. So I'll be quiet just for about 15 seconds, and then we'll go on to the next. Okay, so again, remember that we're talking about these low intensities, these strategies and structures that can be put in place that make minimal demands on the school or district. Next is mentorship. So in thinking about mentors, it is very important that the mentor and the mentee have the same idea, that it's clarified for them what is the intentional support going to be. So mentorships can vary from school to school and district to district, and it can be very minimal types of support, which can make it, again, on that low intensity spectrum. So perhaps it's just that a teacher who has a planning period, and they're an experienced teacher, and they're willing to mentor a new teacher, and that is who is going to be the mentor. So they don't get any type of stipend. So again, there's no impact. They're not having to miss their class, their teaching time, in order to be a mentor to the new teacher. So that's a very low intensity. And also in that, it might just be happenstance when the mentor can meet with the new teacher. So, in just thinking about that one task, that mentorship, how might you still not pay one person to be a mentor for all of your new teachers? So, that would be on the other extreme. That would be high intensity. But in this low intensity, where it doesn't cost a lot of time and money, then how might you still use teachers who have some time available, and perhaps with a stipend as well, and to really provide support to those teachers? So think about, other stipends that are provided at your school, and how might you use other monies? Are there Title II funds for professional development, for professional learning? How might you tap into those additional funds? Who do you contact at your district to find out about those available funds, to provide some extra incentive for your hero teachers that you really want to be mentors for your new teachers? But again, no matter, that clarification of what the support is going to look like is key. So some superintendents have also talked about that they really differentiate that they might have a buddy for the teacher and then also a mentor, and that those are two different roles. So a buddy role might be someone who shows them the ropes as far as, okay, so here's where the copier is. Here, these are the best times to use the copier, or here's how you set up your Google Classroom. This is what I do to help minimize the amount of time that it takes to do that. So you might have those buddies who can help those new teachers with those procedural types of tasks versus that hero teacher that I talked about, that's someone that you really want that new teacher to model, um, to be like in a lot of ways, as far as the way that teaching and learning happens in that classroom. So they might be two different folks who provide or more. You can have those buddy duties can be several people, but the key here is have them assigned and not just hope that it happens by itself. So another thought about mentorship is that it's very important to have structured time for ongoing meetings. So there's two parts that are important here is from the research is that the time is structured, so it's pre-planned, and that it's ongoing, and that it's consistent. So those times are known ahead of time. They are protected times for the mentor to meet with the mentee, and that it is ongoing, that it's not just a one and done or once a semester, that it is something that's ongoing and builds on the meetings from before. And then it's really important when you think about mentorship that it is an intentional type of matching. So if it's in an elementary setting, then having someone from the same grade band, someone from that grade team to be that mentor, um, or someone who uh, is if it's in high school, then someone from the same subject area to be that mentor. Now it's not it you know so there's some varied research on that. So the key part, however, is that the person who's providing that support has um, has once again those classroom structures and strategies and relationships with students that you would like for your new teachers to see and to emulate. So that's number one. And then if you can marry that with some other commonalities that the new teachers have, then that can increase the impact for the mentoring. And then something else that maybe isn't right away thought about is to set up early wins for that mentoring partnership, for the mentor to set up some early wins for those new teachers or for the new teacher that they support. Because no one likes to come to work every day feeling like they don't know if they're doing a good job or not. So the more that the mentor can set up opportunities for the new teachers to have those early wins, especially during that time when it's important in both times when they're increasing towards that anticipation, but also when they're decreasing and moving in towards that disillusionment, that if they can have some key wins during this time before winter break, that can drastically reduce that trough for disillusionment. So setting up those early wins. So just again, some time for you to reflect. Who do you want your new teachers to emulate in your building? And what might be two early wins that you can build into the new teacher experience? What might you do as the leader to help promote that, those early wins for new teachers? And the third area is adjusting working conditions. So, really being mindful about the protection of time for new teachers. So, it turns out, and it is likely your experience as well, that when you were a new teacher, that you might have been, coaching a sport, or you were on at least one committee or more. Anything that was asked of you as a new teacher, you signed up for. And but it turns out that if leaders can think about protecting the time of those new teachers, and especially now, and we'll get into this a little bit more tomorrow, but there are more teachers, new teachers in buildings now who have never student taught. Like they have not taught one day. Um, so there's just extra supports that are needed for them. And so to really be mindful and intentional about protecting these new teachers' time so that you and others within the building can provide the support that they need to become effective teachers. And then thinking about, along with adjusting their working conditions, how is it that you can build a sense of community and belongingness for those teachers soon so that they immediately feel part of a team, whether they are in elementary, middle, or high school, to feel a part of a team, um, a part of a small community within the larger school community, where they can also, build those relationships, those adult um, collegial relationships, and to create this sense of belonging that they belong to that group. So that's sort of like the social aspect, to think about how is it that we can still meet their emotional and social well-being, these of the new teachers, intentionally with groups that you put them with, that you assign them with. And then an additional bullet that's separate from that is promoting collegial collaboration. So, new teachers, especially, find it difficult to effectively plan because they haven't had to do it. They might have had to do it for some classes, some courses that they took, um, but it wasn't necessarily real. And if they haven't student taught, they've never experienced that planning component, which is difficult. I was myself, I spent 12 years in the classroom, and I think at year 12 I was still, finding new ways to tweak how I plan for students to learn every day. And it's just a heavy lift. So how is it that maybe instead of the new teacher having to create the lesson plan, if you will, for their lessons, how can they learn how to use the lesson plans that other teachers have created, or maybe that's already a part of the curriculum, but how can they have an opportunity to witness another teacher implementing that lesson plan, like seeing the lesson plan and then seeing it implemented before they do, or to learn from that experience so that they can see, oh, okay, so this is how I take this, what's on paper, and put that into action more effectively. And again, though it's a lot of upfront, this sounds like a lot to do for new teachers, and it is. But the thing is, they are the future. So you're building on retention strategies to keep them, because there's just, what I'm finding out at least, is that there's not a lot of teachers waiting in line to take that spot. So how is it we can take who is there and grow them, as quickly and as effectively as we can. And so these are just some ideas from research that have been proven to be successful. So that planning piece. And then another thing that goes along with this promoting collegial collaboration is providing an opportunity for these new teachers to share their ideas and their new approaches that maybe they have learned in their undergraduate studies. Maybe it's through technology that they've learned to use. So also providing them an opportunity to be the sharer of knowledge, and what you're doing then is promoting that teacher leadership, just a little a seed, planting that seed of teacher leadership in them. And we know from research that when teachers feel like that they are teacher leaders, that they're more likely to be retained in the to stay in the profession. So in thinking about this protection of time, that's a difficult one. And like I said, it's likely different than our own experiences that we had as a new teacher. But thinking about ways that you can adjust that, even now, even thinking about for next semester, how might you do that? Building that sense of community and belongingness, what can be done now in your own context? And then promoting collegial collaboration. So this is different so that you have this community and belongingness on the social front, the social emotional front. But then this also building on a teacher's building on their craft and using their ideas. And this might be another way for them to have a quick win if they can share some ideas and new approaches with their colleagues. So, just to offer once again some time to reflect, how might you reduce planning but increase planning time for new teachers? So, reducing the amount that they have to plan, but then increase the planning time, whether they're doing it alone or collaboratively, especially. So I'll be quiet for about 15 seconds and let you ponder that. So it turns out that these three low intensity strategies have the potential for high yield. So a high yield on your return for very little cost to the school and district. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to talk about some higher intensity strategies and really honing in on that feedback to new teachers and how you can um, hone in on improving instruction for new teachers. We're going to look at those strategies tomorrow. But even these efforts, and these are important efforts to have right now during this time when teachers are, on that bubble moving down from that anticipatory stage um, to low levels. We want them to have low levels of disillusionment. So again, just as you can see on the screen, these efforts are can still be highly valuable to new teachers when it's frequent and ongoing. So we talked about that in the very beginning, and that needs to be intentional. That doesn't just happen by happenstance, to be frequent and ongoing. And then when you have that personal or emotional support with those unfamiliar tasks and problems, um, then that can result in that higher job satisfaction and higher retention rates for those beginning teachers. Speaking of which, and I didn't put this on a slide, but I was reading um, this week, I had read some research saying that nearly one third of all new teachers in the past 10 years, I don't remember what the range of years was on it, but they said um, that more than 30% of new teachers leave the profession within 3 years. So we have to do things differently. We have to do things differently than when we were new teachers, and to think about what can we be mindful of and strategic about to improve the effectiveness of these teachers and their retention. So again, just reminding you where teachers likely are right now, especially new teachers in your building. And this is another thing that was important about this research from the New Teacher Center is that this is natural. So this isn't anything, I mean, this is just what naturally happens. So the effect that that principals have is again making the slopes from anticipation survival down to a disillusionment to make them less steep so that that trough of disillusionment is lessened. They're not as disillusioned about the profession as they might have been without those intentional supports, and then to accelerate towards rejuvenation so that they're hitting that earlier before you get to March. Notice the quote on the left. So it is important um, for these beginning teachers because they've been so fixated on their improvement, and that's another fact that new teachers do improve faster than during the first 3 years. Teachers in general improve more in their first 3 years of instruction than they do at any other time, typically in their career. And I think that that makes sense because new teachers have so much to learn. So then they just that's why they're so needy as far as support is concerned. So tomorrow, we're gonna talk about building on those strengths that new teachers bring to the table, and even instructionally, and how you can coach those strengths up to then pull up their areas of concern or the areas of where they need to grow, how you can affect those areas even more. And we will be talking about that during our hour together tomorrow. So just a little sneak peek about that. Thinking about the professional growth cycle, and this would be for anyone actually, um, under the level of superintendent, but we're gonna look at this through the lens of the new teachers and how we can be intentional about supporting these teachers on their goals and what that looks like through the iterations of this cycle. So tomorrow, in day two, we will be looking at those high intensity support strategies, things that principals can do differently, and how you can think about the support structures that are already in place at your school, and how even just some tweaks can have high impact yield in the future for these teachers. I just want to let you know also there is another one, Feedback That Feeds Forward. That is October 11th through the 13th, and there's two times for that. It will be at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and then a repeat of that will happen at 3:30. So if you're interested in signing up for that, I'll make sure that you have the link to that if you are interested. If you haven't signed up already, I'll make sure that you have a link to that in your follow-up email that you'll get from me this afternoon. Okay, well, remember that you can email me at Jenny, Jenny, dot Ray, Ray, at leadforward, Leadfwd, hyphen LLC.com. And I'd be happy to provide any additional information that you might want. But I will just lean on you to let me know if there's additional resources that you would like to see based on the questions that you might have. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.